My name is Kareen Diner. By the time you hear this, I'll be frozen carbon drifting between the stars. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I've seen what waits for humanity in the dark beyond our solar system. And God help us, we've already rung the dinner bell. 3 weeks ago, I was just another salvage rat, scraping together enough credits to keep my ship moving and my crew fed. Now I'm the last survivor of mankind's first contact with something so ancient and terrible that our worst nightmares look like bedtime stories in comparison. I've been picking the bones of dead ships for 23 years, ever since the courts stripped my family of our shipping line and left me with nothing but debt and a burning hatred of paperwork. I've crawled through more abandoned hulks and derelict stations than any sane person ever should. My specialty has always been the real ghosts, the ones other captains cross themselves and steer clear of. Ancient skeletons drifting in forgotten systems, their hulls pitted by millennia of radiation, built with technologies no modern database can even catalog. The kind of wrecks that can make you filthy rich or kill you in ways no safety manual ever thought to warn about. That hunger for dangerous work was what led me to the bridge of the salvage cutter Guardian of Faris, Sapson class. When I bought her a year ago with borrowed money, she was a wreck herself, hull pocked by micrometeorites, patched with whatever tempalloy we could afford, life support held together by spit and stubbornness. But she was mine, and she'd brought me home from places that swallowed better ships and smarter crews. 6 souls had signed on under my command, misfits and exiles who couldn't get honest work anywhere else. Alina Martinez, navigator, hands steady as stone and an intuitive feel for spacetime that made her priceless, even if her gambling debts kept her perpetually broke. Tommy Ward, engineer, could coax a reactor back from the dead even when the bottle had won the fight that week. Lisa Hayes, security, cold efficiency forged in violence. Civilian life had been forced on her, not chosen. Dr. Sarah Chen, archaeologist and xenolinguist, brilliant, bitter, blacklisted by academia and reduced to working with people like us. Burke, comms officer, 30 years listening to the silence between stars had made him paranoid in exactly the right ways. Jackson, shuttle pilot, reckless genius who owed money to very patient, very dangerous people in half a dozen systems. We were a crew of losers bound together by the shared conviction that the universe owed us nothing. 3 years of working together had forged the kind of trust that only comes from surviving things that kill other teams. The job that destroyed us started as routine salvage. We were drifting near Kepler's limit, 3 days out from our last contract, when Alina picked up something strange. At first it was just background hash, the usual electromagnetic burble that fills the void between habitable zones. Pulsar static, stellar wind, the ordinary noise of the cosmos. But Alina had 15 years in deep space and knew the difference between noise and signal. She called me to the bridge at 03:40 ship time. Her face was pale under the blue glow of the screens. "You need to see this, Captain. It's coming from NGC 7243. I stared at the data and felt something inside me go cold. NGC 7243 was a dead system orbiting a white dwarf, surveyed decades ago, cataloged as frozen rocks and debris. No one had ever bothered sending a manned expedition. There was nothing worth the fuel. "You're sure about the coordinates?" "Triangulated 5 times on different arrays. It's artificial, Captain, and it's strong." Dr. Sarah Chen appeared in the hatchway, drawn by the commotion. She fed the signal through her xenolinguistic suite. What came back made her grip the console so hard her knuckles went white. "Kareen," she whispered, "this isn't noise. It's structured harmonic sequences, compressed data, mathematical constants. The complexity is off the charts. This matches theoretical models for a Type II civilization." Type II, beings that could harness the entire energy output of a star, build megastructures on astronomical scales, reshape matter at will. We'd barely crawled to Type I, learning to tap our own planet and creep past our star's gravity well. Type II existed only in papers. Finding genuine Type II artifacts would be the greatest discovery in human history. It would also make us rich enough to buy our own fleet, and maybe a shred of respectability. I laid it out for the crew. We could report the find, collect the standard colonial authority reward, and maybe keep the lights on another few months. Or we could investigate ourselves and claim salvage rights to something that could rewrite history. The vote was unanimous. Even Burke's hand stopped shaking when he raised it. I plotted the 4-day burn to NGC 7243. It would burn almost all our remaining fuel. If we found nothing, we'd barely have enough to limp to the nearest outpost. But if the signal was real, fuel would be the least of our problems. The hyperspace transit felt wrong. Crew reported fractured dreams full of impossible geometry and whispering voices. Sarah spent every waking hour peeling back layers of the transmission. The closer we got, the more excited she became. "It's not just a beacon," she told us at the final jump briefing. "There are star charts embedded in it, chemical constants, basic primers. Whoever sent this wanted to be found by someone advanced enough to understand." We dropped out at the system's edge, and immediately knew why the transit had felt cursed. The place was wrong. The white dwarf burned with a cold, surgical light, throwing razor shadows across its frozen cortege of worlds. But none of that mattered, because in stable orbit around the dead star hung a ring. Not a station, not a ship. A ring of black metal and crystalline alloy 300 million kilometers in diameter, large enough to encircle Sol's orbit around Earth with room to spare. It turned slowly, one revolution every 37 hours, bristling with towers that stabbed out into space like thorns on some impossible organism. Bridges arced between them in ways that hurt to look at directly. Age estimates came back at over 50,000 years. And it was still alive. Energy readouts showed continent-sized power flows, artificial gravity, atmospheric containment, all running perfectly after 50 millennia of silence. "Mother of God," Elena breathed, "how is that even possible?" Sarah was already running scans. "The gravitational engineering is beyond anything we have theory for. A structure this massive should warp spacetime like a black hole. It doesn't. They figured out how to negotiate with gravity itself." "No biosigns," Lisa reported, hand resting on her holster. "Whoever built it could swat us like flies. We want to get closer." I made the decision that will haunt me for whatever life I have left. We'd come too far to turn back. Elena brought us in slow. As we approached, one of the city block-sized docking ports lit up. Ancient machinery stirred with eerie grace. Gates that hadn't opened since before humanity learned fire parted, guiding us into a bay big enough for a fleet. A tractor field settled us into a cradle, perfectly sized for the guardian of Faris. Within minutes the bay pressurized. Atmosphere scans came back not just breathable, optimized for human biology. Oxygen mix, pressure, trace gases perfect. Sarah double-checked the numbers 3 times before she believed them. "Either they knew humans 50,000 years before we existed," she said quietly, "or their environmental systems sampled our air and rebuilt it from scratch in minutes." We suited up anyway. Instinct screamed louder than the readouts. The moment we crossed the airlock, we stepped into alien architecture on a scale that broke the mind. Cathedral-sized corridors of shimmering metal crystal hybrid, cables like circulatory systems pulsing with soft bioluminescence, air that tasted of ozone and something electric. The walls were lined with reliefs, tall, elongated humanoids with extra joints and strange sensory clusters, scenes of construction, celebration, empire. They had ringed their birth star, then a dozen more, then hundreds. They had become gods of matter and energy. Then the style changed. Later panels showed the same beings dwarfed by vast shadows at the edges of the frame. Their megastructures went dark. Their suns dimmed. The final images depicted tiny figures kneeling before silhouettes that swallowed star systems whole. Tommy translated the caption beneath one panel with Sarah's software. We looked too far into the dark between the stars. We fed it with our ambition, and it grew fat on the light we stole from the sky. We didn't yet understand what it meant. The tone alone carried despair that crossed species. In the residential districts, we found the truth written in atomic shadows. Entire families flash-burned into walls and floors. Parents curled protectively around children, caught in the middle of ordinary life when something swept through and erased organic matter without touching anything else. In the nurseries, the horror deepened. Cradles in neat rows. Inside, infant builders not vaporized like the adults but partially transformed. Metallic filaments threading immature nervous systems. Mechanical grafts fused to still-forming organs. The process abandoned halfway. They tried to save the children, Tommy said, voice cracking. Hide them by making them part machine. It didn't work. Scratched into the walls in frantic script. They scream when we open their minds. The process fails too small. It sees through the deception. It knows they're still organic. Forgive us. We found more messages, carved in the final hours. Never build stellar collectors. It follows the energy. 7 core systems went dark in a single rotation. Hide in darkness where no light can reach. We should never have drunk so deeply from the hearts of stars. Burke's comms were breaking up, laced with harmonic whispers. Captain, massive energy buildup across the entire ring. Dormant sections are waking up. Whatever you did, it noticed. We raced toward what Sarah identified as the administrative core. A barrier wall grown, not built, nano-engineered material harder than diamond, yet flexible enough to absorb planet-killer impacts. Something had been trying to get through it for 50,000 years. Hairline cracks spiderwebbed its surface. Tommy found the hidden lock. It opened not because we forced it, but because we passed its test. Inside was a perfect sphere large enough to hold a city. Spatial distortion made up and down meaningless. Control surfaces grew from the walls like neural tissue. At the center, shattered containment rings that had once imprisoned something not entirely in our dimension. Sarah pieced together the final logs. They called it the void consciousness, an intelligence that exists in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the resonant signatures thrown off by high-energy civilizations. The brighter you burn, the louder you scream across the multiverse. It wasn't one entity. It was a collective, every civilization it had ever absorbed, their knowledge and personalities preserved and added to the whole. And it farmed. It let species grow until they began stellar engineering, then harvested them at peak energy output. A few individuals from each crop were modified and left behind to seed the next cycle, guaranteeing an eternal supply. The ring builders had captured a fragment, trying to understand it, maybe bargain with it. The fragment let them, learned everything about them, then opened the cage from inside and called the rest. Around the ruined containment field, we found the last of the builders, voluntarily fused with their machinery, choosing integration over extinction. One skeletal figure still clutched a plaque. Sarah translated. We learned too late. It does not merely consume worlds and stars. It consumes possibility, every future that might have been. We tried to imprison infinity. Infinity used our prison to step into reality. Do not seek the deep forces between dimensions. Do not kindle the beacon. There is no salvation, only the choice between absorption and integration. We chose integration. The dark between the stars is not empty. It is patient, and it is hungry. The moment she finished reading, the sphere woke up. 50,000-year-old systems flared to life. Hybrid guardians at the consoles opened glowing eyes. The entire ring shuddered as power surged through arteries of light. The central hybrid spoke, a voice like grinding glaciers. New candidate species identified. Technological assessment, sufficient for harvest. Biological assessment, suitable for integration. Defensive capabilities, negligible. Initiating beacon sequence for Sector Sol 3. Transmission begins in 6 seconds. We had not discovered a warning. We had discovered a trap, left dormant, until another species reached the same technological threshold and walked in to turn the key. We ran. The city remade itself around us. Streets sealing, transit tubes spitting out automated hunters, energy barriers snapping shut. Tommy stayed behind to overload the docking clamps. He bought us 30 seconds with his life. We cleared the ring just as its surface unfolded into a galaxy-spanning transmitter. Sarah decoded the outgoing signal as we burned away on failing engines. It wasn't a warning. It was a menu. Precise coordinates for Earth, full biological survey, tactical assessment, population estimates, optimal harvest strategies, countdown, first arrival in approximately 18 months. We limped out of the system on fumes, knowing we would run dry long before reaching any colony. Behind us, the hunters came. 9 moon-sized constructs of exotic matter and harvested flesh, slipping through space-time like sharks through water. We launched the escape pods carrying every byte of data, every warning, every scrap of proof aimed at Earth, at Vega, at anywhere humanity might listen. I stayed with the Guardian of Pharos to draw pursuit. The constructs absorbed my ship, my dead crew, my final explosion, then built perfect replicas, Trojan horses crewed by things that almost looked human. They scattered toward different stars, carrying their stolen faces. My repair pod lasted 8 hours, long enough to watch the stars go out. Not explode, not fade. Simply cease, eclipsed by something so vast it blotted out constellations without casting a shadow gravity could measure. In my final moments it touched my mind, not cruel, not kind, curious. Your species will contribute greatly. Your aggression, your curiosity, your talent for expansion. Individual existence ends, but collective achievement endures within us. The universe will not grow cold and dark. It will be digested. Then darkness folded over me, gentle as a shroud. This is Captain Kareen Diner, late of the Guardian of Pharos. If you find this pod, do not build the stellar arrays. Do not follow the signal. Do not light the beacon. The dark is not empty. It is hungry, and it is already on its way.